and we'll throw to Stick.
Great, thanks, JC. Okay, I'll just do a quick intro. I guess we're expecting a lot of people here tonight, which is fantastic. Hasn't been a lot happening in person in Rowany recently, so having an opportunity like this, particularly where we can get some very knowledgeable opinions from out of town, is actually really good for us, I think, at this point. Okay, so we're hoping to talk around about getting your gear together tonight, and that's something that everybody who's been fighting for any length of time has had to think about. It starts off with being a strictly utilitarian thing. How can I get into armour and so I can go do some fighting? I've never met anybody at this stage who basically that's as far as they go with the armouring. That there's always something they'd like to do with their armour to make it better. So that can be make it more period, can be more comfortable, can be lighter, can be better in hot weather, anything like that. And once you've seen what the locals are doing, it often tends to just stay the same within a particular group. So I think there's a lot of value in looking at what some other groups have been doing and how they've been approaching their armour making, whether that's for newbies or for people who are wanting to upgrade their kit. So we've got some, I think between, we've got Gabs, Rowland and possibly Rufus. I think he's one of those. But anyway, between the three of them, they've armoured in excess of 100 people, or probably several hundred by now. So I'm sure they'll have some very handy advice. So if I can throw to Gabs, and if you want to talk about getting your gear together.
Oops, hang on. Hello everyone. I have no idea what I just changed my screen. Anyway, we'll change it. There it is. Cool. For those who don't know me, I'm Gabs from the Mercantile and Peaceful Barony of St. Florian de la Riviere in South Brisbane and Southeast Corner. I asked my Baron Rufus, who's done a lot of work with plastic, a material I'm not as, I don't use as much, and Rowland from Mordenvale, who has done a lot more work with uni students, because Newcastle has a university college there. The college is in Crispin, so he has also spent. He uses a lot more mild steel plus a combination of stainless, aluminium, other materials. So he has a. I've asked them along to give a different perspective. Over the years, I tend to work my method for armoring people tends to be a combination of leather, because it's relatively easy for me to tool and the effect isn't so bad. And the other thing I tend to do is I tend to pre-buy parts in. So I will order bits in from the States in bulk and then use those as the basis. So my method isn't necessarily the cheapest, but it's also based on the idea that I can turn it out relatively quickly. Given that I'm time poor, I've gone for the easiest way that I can comparatively quickly turn stuff out. So, not knowing how we wanted to pursue tonight, I haven't actually got an official sort of agenda for tonight. What I just wanted to do is a couple things. Can we show with a show of hands people who aren't actually authorised yet? 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, lovely. Hand down. That's all fine for a second. Yeah, good one, Rufus. The reason I say that one is to you, few fighters, prospective fighters who aren't authorised yet. My first advice is, whatever anyone gets you in, just use in the meantime. Don't wait for the armour to be perfect in your first time. When I first authorised 20 odd years ago, I had a helmet that I could fight only 4 bouts with because it was so large and heavy that it did my neck. And while armour has gotten much better from that point, first thing is you'll be given armor to loan. It'd be my suggestion that you take whatever you can get at the time and just get yourself to the authorization form. The second point I would probably raise is that when it comes to armoring, Lockhart has some problems. The problems are that due to its large geographical size, centers of armor making are few and far between. There'll be a couple people in each group that will do it. They normally volunteer that. Well, we don't have any professional armorers. We have armorers that have tried to be professional armorers, and all of them have failed for a variety of reasons. Some personal, some the nature of the business. So the second suggestion is whatever armor you're offered assistance making, I would take them up on it. So for instance, I'll give you an example of Stig gave me a pattern for a coat of plates. There's a large one with plastic plates around it. It's protective, it's easy to make, and he's offering to help it. Even if that's not your final piece of armor that you want, it's cheap, it's safe, and someone's showing you how to use it. So I would go with that. Now, if you're going to spend money, and at some point you will need to mostly spend money on some parts of it, which is a helmet or other bits and pieces, then I would suggest then you talk to someone about getting the bits that you want that best suit you. And to that end, my other advice to all newcomers is buy nothing on the internet yet. Don't buy a thing. Chat to an experienced fighter, experienced marshal, and say, I'm looking at this, should I get it? Because there is an interesting thing in the rules that there is minimum armor standard, but I, in good conscience, can't put some people in minimum armor standard for fear that the chances of them getting injured are slightly higher. So that's my take on it. Now, obviously, there are going to be specific questions about materials, ideas, where you get bits, and I'm not sure what they are. So I don't know if we want to save questions to the end. Do we, Stig?
Sorry, I was on mute. I think probably best to put the questions at the end. If things come up, if anyone wants to comment on it, then feel free to type a message on the sidebar. It's probably easiest to just let you talk at the moment. And yeah.
So what I'll do is I'll open up for Rufus and then Rowland to have a chat. And then what we'll do is we'll sort of have a combined chat about Rufus's experience, what he's done, and then what Rowland's experience with it is. And then we'll see what sort of comes from those three conversations, and we can start answering questions from that. Does that sound reasonable, Stig? Big thumbs up. Okay, Rufus, it's over to you. I'm going to go on mute. You good to go?
I think so. Is that working? People can hear me? Sweet. All right, so I'm kind of the little guy in the room as far as the armoring thing goes. I've armored, if it got to 10 or a dozen, I'd be shocked. But I've done a lot of work with HDPE. I've got some items here to show you if you guys want to have a look. The cool thing about HDPE is it's super light, it wears really, really, really well. I've got a pair of knee cups here that I've been wearing for over a decade, and they're still going fine. A few scratches on them from one session I did on what's that stuff called? Bitumen. I dropped my knees once. Never do that again. Ridiculous. Downside to HDPE is stuff doesn't stick to it very well. That's one of the big issues with it, I guess. You can make stuff stick, so that's all right. So for that reason, anything that's visible, I like to use leather, as Gab says, or cover it in leather, and just get stuff, just so that, yeah, most of my kit goes underneath stuff. Sorry if I'm a bit all over the shop today. I've had a pretty rough week. So I'll show you guys. I've got a couple of bits of body armor. So this is the first one set I did. This is Georgie's armor, actually. So breastplate and plates for interlocking backplate. The big thing about HDP is it's super cheap, and which means that if you stuff up, you can just do it again because it's a few dollars worth of materials as opposed to a lot of money, and really easy to work with. So the breastplate here was shaped by heating it in the oven and pulled over another breastplate. My knee cups were the same, and I'll use kind of like two. So these are just metal elbow cups that I got from Gabs. Kind of squeeze the HDP, you heat it up in the oven, squeeze it between the two bits of metal, and cool it down in some water. Wow, this is really all over the shop. So this is the body armor I'm currently wearing. It's Gambesson. I highly recommend Gambessons. I reckon they're the best form of body armor. And I've got HDP plates in a slot in the back. Gambessons are kind of time expensive, and you need some vague skill to make them, I guess. But they're not particularly expensive as far as general armor goes. I really like them because they protect everything. So when you get hit those odd spots, you've got something there. So I'll hand it over to Roland, I guess.
Thanks, Rufus. Explain what you've done. Roland, are you there? You want to go?
Sure. Hey, yep. I'm Roland. So up in Mordenvale, I'm the main person doing the armoring up here at the moment. I, likewise, like Rufus, I do a reasonable amount in HDPE, in the plastic. One of the things I do is I've got myself a little CNC cutter, so I can actually do things like cut the HDPE into things like these lamellar plates. I find them really useful because they're simple to make. You can send somebody off to lace them together, and they form very nice, flexible pieces like this, which can be used as body armor. Cost-wise, they're okay. They're reasonably cheap, and for a good whole body protection, pretty good. However, they aren't the cheapest way to go completely. For me, the cheaper way, the easier way, and the better looking way is I do a lot of splintered leather. So something like this, which is a aluminium elbow cup attached to leather.
Roland, can everyone else see Roland? Because I can't see Roland's photo. No one can see Roland.
All I'm getting off Roland is a grey screen.
Yeah, the camera's not.
Okay. Hey, I can see myself now. Is that better?
No.
Yeah.
No?
I'm only seeing RB and that hearing that weird sound right now.
Okay.
There you go. Show us your pretty face, Roland.
I'm trying. I've told it to go to the webcam, and it says it has, and I can see myself on the screen. So, all the joys.
Yeah, I can tell he's tried to get video, but it's not playing. The RTC is not working with him, I think.
Yeah. Basically, I can give a bit of a talk. I can't show you anything. So, but basically, what I do a lot of is I try to use leather because it's easy to work and it looks nice and period, and you can do a lot of things with it. And I try to use HDPE or steel or aluminium to actually provide the rigidity between the pieces of leather, so I can use less leather or thinner leather and hence keep the costs down, while still providing excellent protection. Some of the things I do make with the brand new fighters that come up here is I make metal gorgets with a little bit of leather to give them protection and padding between them and their body, because it's something that I can get people to make relatively easy. I'm quite lucky here in that I have a lot of the tools to make the stuff which means I can deal with mild steel quite easily, and I've got dishing blocks and stuff. For the people who look at this and say, hey, I haven't got a dishing block, I haven't got the tools to cut it, it's actually surprisingly easy to get the very basic tools. My first set of armor I ever made, I got some reasonably thick leather. I cut it into thigh protection shape. I soaked it in water, baked it in an oven, and that got me my rigid leather protection for the thighs. For things like some of the patterns I have, just use 2 metal plates on either side of the knee and a strip of metal down the front of the knee to give you good protection, and it's just held together with leather. Something like that you can you can make as simply as using a jigsaw to cut the steel out, and then a hammer and a wooden stump to actually simply dish it slightly. It doesn't require a lot of dishing. One of the other things I'm quite lucky in, and a lot of these patterns I'm very happy to forward to people if you wish. If anybody contacts me, I can send you a pattern to show you how to make some of these simple single pieces. Again, none of them are particularly outstanding looking things. These are all about getting armor on people fairly cheaply. With that, we've got a very simple helmet design called a grog pot up here. It's very secure, but again, requires not many tools. One of the things we try very much up here is to, if you come to an armoring session, we want you to see progress and so forth, so we'll set you on something pretty easy to make. And by using that combination of leather and plastics and aluminium in the form of splints and various pieces like that, you can get quite good armor, quite protective armor going quite quickly. Yeah, that's, well, without having a camera to actually do a bit of a show and tell, my only other point is I am completely the opposite to Gabs and Rufus. I can't stand gambesons. Basically, I find them too hot for my larger frame. So I tend to do things where I will create flat gambeson-like material, and then I will cut it into the shape of the section of armor that I'm actually looking to pad, and I will edge it, and then therefore I've got a gambeson equivalent just under where my armor is, so I can still breathe and move and not overheat when fighting. But yeah, otherwise happy to answer questions. Again, sorry about the camera not working. That was kind of my hope to be able to show you stuff. Tells me it's working here.
Thanks, Roland. Now, without us going into specific examples, you can ask us specific questions. We can also talk about theme, working leather, metal differences, or you can talk about your own specific, what you would want to achieve. Any of those things, Rufus, Roland, and myself are happy to answer. So, Stig, over to you. I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to do.
No, I'm right. It might be a good time to run through some questions, and we'll see where we go from there.
Sounds
Alrighty. So a couple of the ones that came through in the text chat, Rufus, in regards to HDPE, you mentioned you mostly use 3mm thick stuff. Do you have a particular source for that? Is it something you custom order from somewhere, or can you pick it up at somewhere local? And when I say local, like sort of a chain store, franchise sort of place.
I don't know if it's a chain store, but I literally just Googled HDPE supplies and came up with it. You can get sheet HDPE relatively easily. I found about 3 places without batting, without trying. One actually cut strips for me, so a lot of the strip stuff I don't have to cut, which is lovely. Yeah,
I think Mulford's Plastics is Australia wide. I think they're ones that are not too bad. I think from memory.
Yeah, I think that's who I went through. Yeah.
We have a specialty fittings and plastics up in Newcastle, which just sells it by the sheet. A sheet of 3 meters by 1.5 meters, if you buy in the full sheet, is about $300 4 millimeter thick. The actual thickness of plastic you want is dependent on how much you can handle the sting of something. In that, a 4.5 mil thick piece of HDPE is really protective. It would do equivalent to steel in my view. 3 mils, still perfectly safe, perfectly protective, will flex a little bit more and you will feel a little bit more of the blow coming through it.
Yeah, totally agree. For anything that's flat cut, once you put a bit of shape into it, though, that makes a huge difference. That does give it a lot more rigidity. I've found anyway.
The body armor he did had overlapping plates,
Yeah.
indicator plates. So one of the big secrets with plastic that if you're not, or any metal for that thing, if you're not 100% sure of it, there are some places where you can overlap them. So just like Lamellar, when you rarely hit one plate, it spreads it around. Same thing for overlapping coats maybe on the leg or the body.
Okay, a couple more that have come through in there. I'll start with one which was similar to one that Magnus asked, which is in regards to grades. Like, is there different types of HDPE that is sold? Is there some that are more equivalent to what the materials in the Marshal's Handbook say is equivalent to rigid material, etc., than others? Because I know Kydex is something that's mentioned, but I think Kydex is actually a brand name more so than an actual type of material.
Yeah, Kydex is a brand name.
It's a brand. It's a copyright brand.
Yeah, honestly, I have not been particularly impressed with Kydex. It's quite a lot more expensive and doesn't work that much easier or do anything that much more spectacular. A standard grade of HDPE at a reasonable thickness will do you right. There isn't really anything particularly special as far as I'm concerned about it.
Okay, that's good to know.
I was going to say something else that I might sort of interject and add in regards to Kydex. Kydex is very commonly used to make knife sheaths and stuff like that, and it doesn't survive prolonged reforming or anything like that, and can actually become quite brittle and shatter. So when working with Kydex, I don't know whether it's a part of their chemical composition or whatnot, but I found that if you do have something made of Kydex and you get a bit of heat damage, say from leaving it in the car, or it's been in your shed and it's had a bit of combination of heat and pressure, you can deform and find very difficult to recover the panels without them sort of having fail points.
Cool beans. Preferred method of cutting plastic, Rufus? Just a jigsaw is your go-to?
Yeah, jigsaw. Jigsaw's great. You can even do it with a Stanley knife if you don't have a jigsaw.
I imagine that would take a little bit longer.
Metal shears if you've got them.
Metal shears? Cool. Okay, Jason, you had your hand up a little bit earlier. Is there something particular that you wanted to mention here, or is it
No, actually, I just missed the comments on the side, but I've got a large shed, the black 4 mil ABS, and I was just asking, is that equivalent properties to HDPE?
Yeah, I find I've heard of a lot more of like Kydex and ABS cracking, like whoever it was saying about the fragility thing. I've seen one piece of HDPE crack, and
Yeah,
like my knees have gone through -40 and +40, so and they're still fine.
I would really recommend HDPE because again, it's really hard to get to crack and to break, and when it does, it doesn't become sharp splinters, and it's also pretty good with UV light. So I really do recommend HDPE above everything else.
Yeah. I just got my gorget here. I forgot to mention. I made this gorget by dishing it. Leafric's been doing some wonderful work by dishing HDPE. It dishes really easily, and yeah, it doesn't get overworked or anything like that. So
Appreciate it.
Alrighty. Anyone with verbal questions they would like to ask, please raise your hand and I'll get to you in the order that I see them pop up. It doesn't have to be about plastic anymore. It can be about other things. Jason.
Just one more plastic question. Actually, with a simple coat of plates, I've seen them made before where the plates are not overlapping, because I assume the overlap would create 8 mil of plastic. Is there a need for the plates to overlap to be effective for body armour for the torso?
No, it's a bit of a case of as long as you don't have more than like 0.5 mil gap in between the plates, 4 mil is good enough with just a like not 0.5 mil, a 5 mil gap between them. You don't want much more than that. Honestly, overlapping them, as long as you overlap them so that they run with the body and curve with the body nicely, it works really well. But not having them overlapped, I've seen lots of people do that and have no problems with them at all. In general, the larger you can make the plate, if it's not overlapped, the better. But again, you don't want to make them too big because then you'll cause movement difficulty.
Appreciate it.
I was going to say, King in a previous persona fought in a brigandine with smaller sets of plates in his suit, so maybe he has something to add to that.
That's the brigandine that I'm currently very, very slowly replacing.
The King has some.
But yes, King did have his hand up, so I'll shoot to him, and I'll Shinjo, I saw yours. I'll come back to you after King Gidai.
So my opinion is that the less resistant to bending that the material that you're using, the more useful overlap is going to be. If you are going to have something that bends anyway, then the benefits of overlapping are really going to be mitigated anyway by the flex of the material, which I would suggest HTB is a fairly flexible material. So it's not really going to benefit much from overlapping, and it will create areas of thickness. I used mild steel plates, about 70 millimeters square, riveted on the 4 corners, and I made a brigandine out of that. My plates largely were not overlapping, and I found that was fine from a SCA point of view. If you were using sharp things, then that might be a problem. But if you don't,
appreciate it.
Alrighty.
Is that kind of what you're getting at, Gabs?
Yeah, just because metal and plastic both react in smaller sections very comparatively in terms of what it is. And you had experience with using something that would be similar in terms of how it responds. So
yeah, I think brigandine is a great body armor. It's not my period anymore, but it is. I think it's functionally the best kind of armor we use. When you back it up with some padding, it's fantastic.
So one of the weird benefits to overlapping, which doesn't really have anything to do with protection, is you can join it to itself. So this is held together with lacing. It means I don't need to have any leather or anything like that to back it onto. This is just laced together with paracord. So that's kind of a benefit to overlapping, I guess. You don't need to have another structure to hold it together.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, Shinjo. I have Shinjo, I have Matthias.
I wanted to ask about gauntlets. I know Stig's come up with a way to get some decent ones, but they're a thing for two-handed fighters trying to get the right ones, really, and ones that actually work. And, you know, it's a very personal thing trying to find ones that work for you and getting them the right size.
If you give me a minute, I'll go grab my gauntlets and I'll just show you what I do, if you like.
Okay.
Move on to another question. I'll be back.
I'll move on to Matthias, and then we'll come back to Rufus to answer that one.
Not so much a question, just more something to support a couple of guys who've already talked about making leather armor. One of the things that's come a lot to me, especially over the last 3 years, is people asking me how to fix armor that's ended up with a slight green fuzz, which is quite common, especially after some of the wetter events throughout the year. for new fighters, a little bit of mold on leather is not the end of the world. Most leather has been treated well enough that, with the exception of a little bit of surface pitting on veg tan, 9 times out of 10, the best thing you can do to sort of, rejuvenate it and recover it is take some warm water, not boiling, give it a good, wipe down and wipe as much of it off as you can. Then without sort of putting it in direct sunlight, find yourself a warm, sort of indirect sunny area, because UV will kill any remaining mold spores. Give it a good chance to air out and dry. And then, after it's had about, say, an hour and a half to 2 hours of indirect sunlight and has had the chance to dry out again, just a simple wax-based product like either Dubbin or Fibings leather conditioner or anything like that, which you can buy from leatherworking stores, anywhere that sells sort of country western boots or even farming equipment, you can usually get Dubbin. Yeah, lanolin's also good. Just need to be careful when you are using lanolin. It, in large quantities, can be a little bit iffy for your skin and that, so use gloves wherever possible. I tend to use wax-based products like Fibings leather conditioner because it's a paraffin-based one, and like with Dubbin, it's perfectly safe on your skin, and it'll help rejuvenate and restore your leather a little bit and keep it flexible, stop it cracking. And some of my leather gear is going on 12, 13 years now and still holding up well. And my medieval shoes, which I fight in, have literally been submerged to the knee in mud when we were down in Melbourne last year, and they came back with just a simple hose off, a little bit of UV, Dubbin, and a light boot brush. So, if anyone ever, does have any sort of leather restorative questions in that, I'm always happy to help with that. So yeah, thank you.
Yep, and Kinky Day also suggests clove oil. I know he passed along to me as something to use as well. We call it mold in a lovely bottle labeled mold spice, because
clove oil.
Clove
oil does work very well. It also works as well for canvas as well. Once again, combination of clove oil and ultraviolet light is usually, great way to either. It won't fully clean off the staining from the mold, but it will stop the mold from spreading. And you usually end up with a bit of a mottled discoloration, but it can save canvas and leather quite well.
Excellent. Okay, I see Rufus is back, so let's return to the question about gauntlets, and we'll throw to Rufus.
Great. So I've got a set of the first lot of titaniums to come out of the Ukraine that what's his face, the Kiwi brought over. His name Grim. We modified them slightly, but so one of the things I really look for is, as a two-handed fighter, is the ability to move my thumb sideways. That's super important to give you that bit more control, to gain more angles and get a bit more fun with it, right? I see too many gauntlets that lock your thumb in rigid. It does you no favors. I strap it tight. They're in terrible condition. They all need restrapping. I strap it tight into the palm, across the whole palm, and then these two fingers are strapped in and laced in, right? Leaving my index and my pinky finger free to move by themselves. That means that I can get that nice finger control on my sword as well. Means I don't have too much problems fighting with this with single sword, because I can do all that nice hand movement stuff that you just can't do if your hand's glued into a set of gauntlets. Less of an issue with a polearm, but with a two-handed sword, or with the bastard sword, it's much important. A soft, well, this has got some plates underneath. A soft cuff is good because it lets you just move your wrists a bit further, a bit more comfortably without bashing. Yeah. I've worn half a dozen sets of gauntlets, and this is the strapping that I've kind of always gone with. It doesn't really matter about anything else. That thumb movement, though, we modified these out, ripped the thumb off, put it inside, and just put it on a single pivot rivet, just so I can get that thumb movement. That's really important. Sweet. Anything else? Questions?
No, that was really good.
Awesome. Thanks, Rufus. All right, I'm going to jump to... I think Kinky Dai had his hand up next. And then I'll go to Kedrix and Attilia.
I think all I had to say was about the Clovolt, so I'm probably done.
Okay. Kedrix. You're very, very quiet. You might need to move closer to your mic.
I was wondering what sort of padding people like to use. I think it's my legs that I've currently not got padding on and I need to. And then how do I attach it and, all that practical stuff.
Okay, so for those that, like me, that was very, very faint. The question was about what sort of padding do people like to use. Kedrix currently doesn't have any padding in their legs, but needs it. So preferred type of padding and how best to attach it.
Can I answer that, please?
Sure.
Hello? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So basically, closed cell foam. One of the more firm foams they can find at Clark Rubbers are a good choice for padding. I actually had a pair of Quizzes which uses those firm foams for padding, and works quite well. And same thing with the body armor. Like I also use like 5 or 6 mil closed cell foam for padding as well. And to attach it, you can literally just use either double-sided tape or roll bits of tape, and then just simply stick it to the inside of the armor.
For myself, I dislike closed cell foam completely for everything but inside the helmet because it goes slimy and horrible and deteriorates reasonably quickly. One of the things I found works quite well is I tend to go to Mortels, which is a sheepskin shoe manufacturer, and you say either that you're looking for scraps of sheepskin for padding armor, or if they look at you funnily, say that you have a disabled friend and you're looking for some sheepskin to go on a chair for a wheelchair or something like that. That I find that new sheepskin has a lot of flex in it. It breathes a lot better, and it absorbs the blows just as well, if not better, than closed cell foam. It also looks a bit more period.
Yeah, something about closed cell foam is that basically you are going to be prone to overheating. I mean, obviously, closed cell foam will does not breathe as well as like let's just say sheepskin. So it's something to think about if you're going down that route.
The other thing, as well as what Kingy Dai's mentioned in regards to Schausers, which are basically gambeson sleeves for your legs, is I got away with not padding my legs. Mostly because I've always used metal legs, and I found that if I had them sufficiently well strapped, that it meant that there was no air gap of any sort in between, the actual plate and my leg. It didn't actually cause any slap or too much in the way there. So.
Yeah, the problem with that is that I've already got a set of legs that I would like to improve rather than buying a whole set, so I'd rather pad what I've got.
Yeah, we can't hear you. You need to turn. I don't know if you can turn up your microphone on your end. But yeah, so there's a variety of different ones there. The beauty of cuisses is that like you put them on, and they basically lace to you, so you're not worrying about them going onto the armor.
So
I think you mean Shelter, KC.
yeah,
Say again?
Shelter. I've been using
Shelters.
Shelter
What did I say?
Sorry, I've been using Shelters for about 25 years since I started. So of some version, even if they're cut off just beneath the knee or some other version of it. The advantages of Shelters is that they do create a layer of padding. Like they feel the need in if you pad them right, you don't need knee pads because you can use an extra layer around where the knee is, provide extra padding, so you don't need that. Shelters wick sweat, so if you do get sweat, they naturally dry out. The other thing is, depending on what sort of legs you go for, the material, you can actually secure many armories. If you can imagine, you have your padding, then you put your legs over the top of it. It is possible to have a pair of Shelters whereby it's all one part. That is, you attach the cuisses to the padding, and you have the knee attached to them as well, so that they effectively go on with just a belt. You're wearing just a belt, single belt that goes the legs up, if you can imagine like that, to have that in place. And I've been using that now for, I don't know, about 2 years as a sort of an early period hidden under a baggy pair of pants version. So it all sort of depends on I think it depends on what your legs are made of and what sort of knee cops you're using and some other bits and pieces. That might sort of also determine what kind of leg padding you want to use. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yep. And so Caterix's mic seems to be dead. Thumbs up, Caterix, if it's leather. Nope. Okay. But definitely food for thought, and this is why we recorded it. All right, moving on to Tilia, who was next up with their hand, and then I will go to Stig.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Perfect. So 2 questions. One was still regarding to the leather. What would you consider too far gone when it comes to mold? Because I've had a chin strap that looked pretty horrible, like really like green and white and everything, and it was very thin leather too. So when do we have to go like, okay, that's enough, we need a new piece? When is it unsalvageable?
Do you mean yours is moldy?
Well, it was, and I think it wasn't even mine. It was, I think, one of the loaner got, but I was taking care of it, but I didn't keep it outside somewhere in the air, but I kept it in a cupboard. I'm so sorry. But I need to replace it now, either that or clean it.
75% of me says throw it away and make a new one. Because you're talking about mold somewhere near your mouth and nose, and that's never going to be a good idea.
I know. That's yeah.
If you really must use it because you have no other leather, then you could try the cobalt trick, but toss it away.
I've got a scrap somewhere. It's okay. Okay, and the other question was, I found that very interesting. I forgot who said it, but someone didn't use any padding because they were happy with the metal that they already had. Like the metal was enough of a protection that they didn't need extra padding, which I have pretty. I get very hot. I have big thighs. That sounds like a really interesting solution. Right now, Stig has been helping me a lot with leg armor where we used some. Was it a PVC drum, right?
Yeah, that's one of the drums from Reverse Garbage.
Yeah.
They're okay, but yeah, variable thickness.
Oh, okay. So in the future, that could be a nice project. Is that what you're saying? Like, does it really absorb that much that you can actually forego the padding?
So the 2 leg harnesses that I've used for tournament fighting, because when we were doing Greek as a household and it was war fighting, it was my leg armor was Zumbang shorts, knee cops, and greaves, because if I got hit in the leg, then, well, you're doing a good job against that aspis. Everything else I've used has either been 16 gauge mild or 16 gauge stainless, which is what my current set is. And yeah, you don't actually require padding under the plate if you don't want it. So with my kit, it's I have a pair of tights under which on the knees I've got a pair of knee pads because that's where you do require padding. But otherwise, the way that, partly for calibration reasons, I don't like having anything else between me and the actual plate to help judge where the blows actually land, and whether they're landing sufficiently good. So, like, I'm also someone who, the sport I played when I was a youngster was tennis, so therefore, thighs are a thing in that sport as well. So that might be part of where that's come from, is that I have enough natural padding in the muscle there that it doesn't actually require any additional on top of it to worry so much, because the force is coming through muscle anyway. So it's just more of occasionally I'll get a really good one from someone like King Yadai, which will sting. And I'll go, yep, that was good, and then go, that was a leg. But that's one of those ones where that's a personal pain tolerance thing, and if people feel that or would like to have something additional underneath there, then that's entirely up to them for comfort. So I don't begrudge them that at all, because why cause more pain to yourself than you need?
Oh, okay, no, it's really
the worst one I got
know.
was when I was not looking after my straps quite so well, and I had a couple of straps that had gone, and Sir John Dye hit me in the leg sufficiently hard that basically the leather slapped my leg, and that left an interesting that just left an interesting mark, because, well, there was a piece of plate that slapped me. And he is not a small gentleman by any stretch of the imagination, so but that's what I mean by, the straps holding it to the leg, the force transference is very minimal through it, because the rigidity of the plate into what's underneath it is what absorbs most of it.
Yeah, right. Seems like there's no way around some form of padding for me, because
it depends on the material.
But I mean, my pain threshold is okay, but it was just several fighter practices where I had hand-sized bruises on both thighs. And no way of living. It's, especially in summer when I went to the beach with horrible-looking legs.
Sorry, Rufus. I felt there was a good comment coming through.
It's good for your leg defense, those sorts of bruises.
I wish.
Yeah,
there's two different things with leg armor and thigh armor. There's two different things to think about. Padding is really good for stopping the sting and stopping the pain instantly. Thicker material to spread the blow is better at stopping the bruise and deeper, longer term damage to it. So if you've got thick plate, and you're happy, you can handle a bit of a sting, certainly you can go without the padding. The two working together work best, but so it is a bit of a case of, if you're finding you're getting a hand-sized bruise, it might be a case of increasing the rigidity or putting a little bit thicker or splints in the leg armor to help spread the blow onto the padding more than just going with thicker padding.
Yeah, so far I haven't used the armor I worked with Stieg. So far I've used the loner armor only in fights. So
that explains the bruises right there.
Okay, it's free armor. I can't complain.
So about armoring particular areas as well as padding, it also really depends on how you fight as well. It's taking my own armoring journey, for example. At first, set up with all the basic stuff like breastplate, quizzes, and whatnot. But as I later found my preferred way of fighting, I started to consider, maybe passive on what if I actually get rid of certain parts of the armor. So what I ended up doing was I actually created, with my current suit of armor, Lamellar armor, I actually created a skirt which will also cover my thighs, but also gotten rid of the quizzes, because I found that basically having better movement is more of a defensive option for me than just adding up on armor. So so it really so in my opinion, also depends on how you fight, what you fight with, and as well as things like pain tolerances and what you're willing to actually deal with as well. So that's my 2 cents in that regard.
Okay. I think that fairly well covers that one. So I'll move on to Stick, who has the next with his hand up. Though it's gone away now. But
Yep. I just unmuted. That's all. Okay. I wanted to ask about Lamellar briefly. I know it's. I've been asked about it a number of times, particularly people who've got curvier body shapes, so it's a nice sort of armour to actually fit someone. And I know that Gabs and Rowland in particular have made a lot of Lamellar. And if you have any thoughts around, is plastic better than aluminium, for example, or particular tips, that sort of thing. And there may also be some other opinions from other fighters here who use Lamellar frequently.
Lamellar, the herpes of the SCA world.
I'm stealing that.
To quote Ragnar. Ragnar told me that line yonks ago for those old timers who know Ragnar. I'll let Rowland go answer this one. The plastic versus metal argument mostly comes down. I think the discussion about what Lamellar you go down to depends on the size, because most of the time you're charged per plate. So there is a yonks ago from I got a whole lot of Lamellar from a place called Polar Bear Forge. This was probably 10 years ago, 11 years ago. And that was a particular, as big a size plate as I could get, that was fluted to mean that for a standard body shape, you needed somewhere between 200 to 250. And that would do a number of plates around your body plus chest and so on and so forth. If you were to go, another very common brand is Overseer from Illinois. He does smaller D plates. And it takes me 480 of those D plates to do the same amount as 230 of the other plates. So depending on what you go with can really affect your price. And you have to take that into consideration because there are other places to do it. But I would probably go for what Rowland had more experience making the plastic Lamellar, so he can probably do a comparison between the metal and the plastic a little better than I can.
So again, I've worn aluminium Lamellar for many, many years. I tend to wear it, apart from over the kidneys, I wear it with no padding underneath. And I find it gives me good protection, although if I do get a body shot, it gives me a sting for a couple of seconds, and then I'm fine afterwards. I'll still get a bruiser every so often through it. The plastic stuff, I have experimented making Lamellar from 4.5 mil plastic and also from 3 mil plastic. Both work fine. The 4 mil just gives you a bit more of a tanky kind of spreading of the load and protects you quite nicely. From a weight wise, the plastic is about 2/3 the weight of the aluminium, and compared to steel, it weighs nothing. And plastic works really nicely. If you get a good black plastic, it looks kind of like leather from a distance, so from a meter away, it doesn't look terrible. But it does protect quite nicely. From a cost-wise, the aluminium is usually double the price of the plastic Lamellar, depending on how you cut it and who cuts it. If you're willing to sit there with a drill and do it all by hand, you've got more patience than me. But it is certainly something you can do quite easily by hand. You can also make leather Lamellar. A couple of fighters up in Newcastle fight in leather Lamellar, and I think Alpha does too, doesn't he?
King Giro does.
Yep.
As well.
And it works quite well, but leather Lamellar has to be re-hardened every so often. The aluminium Lamellar, I've got a couple of plates that every so often I have to go bash back into flat because they do occasionally get a blow on them. Yep, like that one. that Magnus was holding up a second ago. They do get a bit of a curve in them, but you can bash them straight and off you go again. One other problem I've had with aluminium lamellar is because it's so thin, it does cut into the paracord, whereas I haven't had that problem with the plastic, but the plastic is a fair bit more chunky. As Magnus threw up in the chat there, I'm a bit worried why he's following my YouTube channel, putting up posts of me with lamellar plates. But yes, that is a couple of videos where I talk about lacing them together and how designs for body armor and so forth like that.
Awesome, thanks, Roland.
Oh, I can also give you a rough price on the different kinds of lamellar, but that feels too much like I'm trying to sell the damn stuff.
That's just creating extra work for yourself. No one wants to do that. We'll put the shop link up in the show notes later. Okay, I'm not sure who has had their hand up first between Shinjo and Matthias, but I'll go to Matthias first because Shinjo's he's pointing up to Shinjo. Shinjo, you're on.
I just wanted to say a point about plastic lamellar. I'm a very beginning armourer and I work this from a pattern really. This is the Bunnings garden plastic and it's supposed to look a bit like enamelled metal and I strung it with shoelaces, so it's meant to be shoulder stuff once it actually gets mounted. But you've got the overlap here really and it is quite strong.
That's one thing that lamellar is really good for, is it's really easy for anyone to do it, put it together. You can basically, if you've got some paracord or some shoelaces or something and a bit of time, you can sit in front of a TV and make it. We have a guy up in Newcastle who's made lamellar for his body armor, his thigh armor, his shoulder armor, and part of his arm armor. So yeah, it could be used for a fair bit.
It's a lot of free time. Matthias.
I've done a bit of armoring in various circumstances. I've tried with a number of different armors over the years. The one stumbling block that I've always had, and is one that keeps coming back up to me, is to do shaping of torso armor for female fighters who don't fit the smaller sizes. I've had a little bit of a play around, and I've done wet molded rock oak for a female fighter who does metal weapons combat, to which she then bought individual cups from a martial arts chest guard and basically cut the chest guard down the center and mounted the cups in to the molded leather. But for those who are a bit more armoring inclined, do you have any suggestions for doing chest protect or minimal chest protection for either heavy combat or rapier or combat archery for those of a larger physique?
I can tell Gabs' squire story where he was fitting plastic body armor to one of his squires.
Go for it.
I was going to say, is it funnier if you tell it or if Gabs tells it?
I don't know.
Whichever is the more amusing is the one I want to go for.
I'm sure Roland has a better version than I do.
I don't know if I have. I got it secondhand. I'm trying to remember your squire's name when she got it done to her. Basically, one of the ways that Gabs has made body armor previously out of plastic and HDPE stuff is you basically put a sheet into the, you roughly cut it, you put it into the oven, you get the participant to wear a couple of heavy jumpers, and then you wear welding gloves and you take the hot plastic out and you push it against your model. The story we have is Gabs very embarrassedly holding a pair of welding gloves and a piece of plastic against the chest of one of his female squires going, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And she's looking at him basically going, what the hell? Like, I'm the Michelin man at the moment. I can't feel anything. That is a good way of getting the general shape. I have had a lot of success again with Lamellar because it does give good shaping around busts and gives protection to the breasts and so forth, and it can be made larger and smaller as needed. However, there has been some times where picking out bits of plastic and doing them in plates, as in a Visby and so forth like that, also works really well. One of the things I've played with, and when I was Crown a couple of years ago, I got a sheet of fairly thin aluminium. I think it was 1.6, or it might have been 2 mil aluminium, and I got a steel pattern for a Visby, and cut the aluminium like that, put it onto a fairly thin leather coat, riveted it on like that, and that gives you a super protective armor. It's not quite designed for the female in that it will squish the breasts a bit, but if you do allow for that and make it in plates that overlap and give some movement, it does act really good body armor, and is actually, as long as the aluminium's pretty thin, you can actually shape it pretty easily with just a stump and a soft mallet, and it takes a shape really well and actually is pretty good protection for the body.
Unmute myself.
I agree with what Roland says. There's a whole lot of variety of options, and it really is on a case-by-case basis of what they want. There's a couple of things you can do, but Lamellar is the generic universal one because you can tighten or loosen it as required. So you can have the lacing quite tight on each other, or you can have them quite gappy, so it can account for curves.
Yeah. Stig.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for that, guys. I guess as another leading question, helmets are always a good thing to ask about. I guess I'm in the habit of recommending to new fighters something simple like a open face bassinet. I'm wondering if the Brains Trust has any further thoughts on that.
Okay, so far as I can figure out, Rowany has the best current system for getting people in at a relatively easy rate by just getting them in from Ironmonger. Is that correct? The bassinets from Ironmonger at the price and arrangements. It's currently the best arrangement that I know of. So, short of anything specific, I think the system, works quite well. How much are they coming out at about at the moment?
It's been a while. I think we were ordering them 4 at a time, something like that, and we were coming in about $300 or $400 for a helm.
I think the munitions version was a bit cheaper than that. But yeah, if we could get 3 or 4, that was under the $1,000 threshold for import tax. So
back when there was a threshold limit for import tax, I think there isn't one anymore. It's just whatever you bring in, you've got to pay GST on. So
yeah.
But they are, like, as Shinjo's just pointed out, they are absolute tanks. People will have them for a couple of years and then decide that they want to go in a different direction with their kit and sell them on second hand, which is so there's a few of them floating around, I think, second hand. So I think basically Alpha spoke to the guy at Ironmonger and went, so I need a small, a medium, and a large size. I think we mostly just ordered off his website, Jason. The trick there was basically having enough newer people coming in that when you bought 4 helmets, you were pretty much ready to sell 4 helmets straight away, so that you had a nice ready flow of cash coming in and out, so everything sort of stayed at cost prices.
I'm just trying to think how to get on to the next order that you do. As you mentioned earlier, always a bit skeptical with different web purchases, but
yeah, Ironmonger's stuff is generally quite good, because he's over in the States where they do have people who are professional armorers. He's one, and he does specifically SCA armor. as opposed to some of the other armorers that you might find around there that will do HMB or metal weapon stuff, and they'll sort of do a line of SCA stuff. Ironmonger stuff is almost pretty much exclusively SCA based armor from the stuff that I've seen. He might have branched out into other things since, but his core thing has been that. Scaring is definitely, yeah, that's a good tip as well in regards to chin strap laces, where they should go. You don't want slipping.
There is some advantage to having a couple of people around who are a little bit more experienced with lacing of helmets and attaching them onto heads, because there are a couple of tricks about lacing points near the ears to get the helmet to actually sit correctly on your face, so a thrust to the face does not cause it to rock and go into the face. So it is always good to have someone with a little bit of experience have a look at a helm if you are looking to drill holes into it to put lacing points or to put a permanent chin strap into it, just to make sure that it is gripping the head correctly and not going to slip around. I often recommend Boccolo as a good armorer in the US as well. He makes a lot of the aluminium and mild and stainless that we get up here in Mordenvale, just because he churns it out at a pretty good price and pretty reasonable quality. It's nothing super fancy, but it is good kind of elbows and knees and so forth. We also tend to chuff out grog pots, as I mentioned before. They're a fairly stock standard helmet. I have had Colfina. I don't know if you guys have all met Colfina fighting with her glaive on the warfield. She made her own helmet as in like a week or two of coming to armoring, so they're not that hard to make. She had no metalworking experience beforehand. I have got patterns for those, but it does take a bit of skill and willingness to take a risk and dish steel and rivet it together and so forth.
Yep, most definitely. Rufus or Gabs, anything in regards to helmets? That's what we're talking. Because I know, Gabs, you often order in your tops from places like Rough from the Hammer, and you'll then create the face, or you'll commission Felix to make faces or bar grills for them. Any pointers you might have there on that?
Helmets are the hardest thing for us to source. They're also possibly, apart from gauntlets, the most important thing you need to source. The problem is, the easier the helmet it is to make, the less protective it is, as a general rule. That is to say, if you're making something out of 1.6 mil mild steel, which is easy to shape, then it's inherently not going to be as safe as 1.6 mil stainless, which is harder to shape, which is then in turn not going to be as safe as 2 mil stainless, and so on and so forth. So the issue for helmets is that if you're going to spend any money on that, then I would buy that. I think the advantage for the Bascinets that you guys got from Ironmonger is, if I remember correctly, they were effectively 2 mil mild steel, so they were above the minimum and still relatively safe with a very solid bar grill.
Yep.
The other issue is
the link for them.
the big issue currently facing equipping helms in Australia is that shipping from America has gone up exponentially. It would have in the last 2 years doubled in real terms. Having recently ordered 20 pounds, which is about 9 kilograms of rivets, that cost me $90 American to order that. And that's in a box. That's in a pre-weighed box that a year or so ago, 2 years ago, cost me $40 American. So there is a real term for things, and that's them giving us a cheap pre-sale box that you can buy up to a certain weight. As soon as you put helmet tops that don't fit in there, you have to have a separate section box, and the prices go upwards and upwards of that. So there are some plans afoot, but they're not immediate term results how to get around the helmet problem. I'd be interested to hear when you order your next batch of Bascinet how much shipping has gone up, because I expect it will be much more than previous.
Yeah, I have to see when Alpha does his next one, because he's the one who's sort of in charge of it. Or he runs it anyways, as far as I'm aware. Stig's not telling me otherwise at this moment, so we'll see what he says later on.
Yeah, I made an inquiry with them going back when we were pulling a bunch of Loma gear together that ran astray, and I think both Ironmonger and I got distracted off in other directions. So yeah, that shipment didn't happen. But yeah, Alpha's definitely the person still who's got all the experience with those Bascinet shipments.
Yeah, fair. Alrighty. Cool. Gonna do a quick scroll through to see if anyone's got their hand up. No. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions on armoring whilst we're here? Fuck. Alrighty. I'm now going to very briefly, for about 15 minutes or so, open the floor. If anyone has any general fighty questions they would like to ask, the local, well, or maybe not quite so local, the two dukes, the count, the two barons that we've got here. Shinjo's hand went up so fast there, I think she might have hurt herself. But I will go Shinjo first, and then I'll go to Attilia.
Can I talk to Gui when he's done?
Sure, you can absolutely talk to Gui.
When I've done what?
Well, I don't know what he's done, but
No, I've got an music anecdote of what happens. I don't want to interrupt. I think everyone else might find it enjoyable. So, go.
My question is about Spring War. I know we're not quite sure really what's going on, but it's really if I'm hoping to have my armor ready if it's on. So my question is it worth trying to get it to that point?
Yes.
This is for Rowland.
Do the thing. Just do the thing.
Isn't this one for you, Gabs?
Wars get in the way of tournaments. What are you talking about?
You are. Oh, really? You asked Gabs about a warfighting question?
This is rather urgent for me because I'm moving house soon, so rushing to get my armor ready for Spring War is a bit of a thing. I mean, I have to go to Stig's one more time to finish my legs.
Yep. So the situation with Spring War at this moment is it's not looking to be a multi-day event. We are in negotiations and talking to the B&B and so forth to hold a one-day long event, which will have at least a court food supplied and a tourney, if not a couple more things. But with the current COVID uncertainty and the fact that the outgoing Baron is immunocompromised, we're having to play it very carefully. This is all up in the air at the moment, but yeah, we are working hard. We're very much hoping for something for the event to still occur, but it will be on a cut down scale, I'm afraid.
Alrighty, I think that's about as much certainty as we're going to get at this stage, given the very fluid nature of things as they currently run. And
thanks. That's a lot more than what we know already. Good.
Yeah, I think I saw a post from Rowland yesterday saying that hopefully by the end of the week they'd have a bit more certainty about some stuff. But stay tuned.
We just need to. We're just in negotiations of what the incoming and outgoing B&B would like and what the site is willing to do and what we can afford and what the COVID situation is. but yes, by the end of the week, I am hoping to have a post and everything cleared up by then.
Cool. Attilia, you had a question.
Yeah, I've been following Rowland's Pell work videos a little bit, and there's one drill in particular that my underarm just keeps cramping up. It's the where you have 6 points and you do 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, and so on. And I was wondering, like, what do you do to loosen up that arm so you don't have to stop the practice? It just cramps up, and I wonder whether you guys, do you just stretch it? Like, what's the practical solution to this?
So cramping up of the arm is usually related to gripping the sword too tightly. If you grip the sword quite tightly, you'll get quite tight muscles up the arm, and from repeated use and striking the Pell, you'll get more vibrations back up the arm. The suggestion is try very hard to loosen the grip on your sword, so much so that if in your next Pell session the sword does not fly out of your hand at least once during your Pell session, you're gripping it too tightly. Okay, it's a bit of a case of there is different styles of strikes. There's cuts and snaps and so forth. For a snap, you can have a surprisingly loose grip. And so much so, I don't know, did I put a video of where I'm actually using that articulated sword to deliver a blow?
You did some, I think so.
The whole point of that one is to demonstrate that it's not the actual, with the snap, it's not the actual wrist and the tightness that you're holding the sword that delivers the blow into the actual Pell and the person you're hitting. It's the flow of the body motion and the sword in motion and the flicking around that delivers the power there. Basically, my view is definitely take it easy. Don't hit the Pell too hard, and also make sure you've got a nice loose grip on the sword, because otherwise you will be transitioning vibrations up your arm and doing damage to muscles and so forth. So yeah, nice and easy. Take a break if you need to. Don't have to do it all in one go. Don't have to do it super fast. Don't hit the Pell hard. And nice and loose with the hand, because it is the biggest problem I see on a lot of early fighters is they feel that they've got a deft grip and squeeze the life out of their sword.
Maybe. Thank you very much.
Alrighty, does anybody else have anything? Things popping up.
Right, so this is going to be for amusement of Gui. So at last night school at Mordenvale, I asked Gui for some bouts as a lefty because I wasn't particularly good. I'm atrociously bad at lefties. And Gui was very nice, and he just sort of hit me up and down the field at various points. And it was videotaped. Do you remember this one? He threw one blow, and I totally reacted the wrong way and curled my body completely around to the point where I showed him my back, at which point he hit me on the spine, and I threw a wobbly. I was like, the pain went through my back, and I had
that was a second bout. I hit your spine twice.
Yeah.
Felt really bad.
Don't apologize for you. This is the funny bit. Like, I knew if ever it was happening, it really, really hurt, but that's okay. This is not the funny bit. The funny bit is this: someone was videotaping it of me going, throwing my sword, stamping out. Magnus has seen it. Rowland's seen me do this. Throwing my helmet. Rufus has seen me do it. In fact, a couple of people haven't seen me do it. Stig's seen me do it. Throw my helmet. Storm off the field. And there's footage put up of night school, and that footage was up for about a week.
Yeah, he's put it up.
And then it was taken down. And I never asked for it taken down. I thought it was a good example of not what to do in two different ways of responding and of responding in things. I thought this is a good example. And I've always wondered, like, I don't know what happened to it. It was just they felt bad about it.
I asked Eves to hide it, to make it private, because it's not who you are, Gabs. You're not like that. That's not the kind of fighter you are.
Yeah, but
to have that permanently on the internet is not fair.
I just use this as an example of the fact that everyone's mortal. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I didn't think it's an example to do, but I just thought it was very interesting for other fighters to see that the people you fight are mere mortals. And one of the interesting things about armor is for 26. I've been fighting 20. Hang on, I can do the math. No, I can't. 23 years. 23 years I've been fighting. To this day, I still feel unsafe in armor most of the time. I still want to put more armor on myself because after all these years, I still feel unsafe. Like I still want to wear shoulder armor. I still want to wear lots of body armor. I still want to wear lots of leg armor after 26 years. And that's because I have a low pain threshold, like a really low pain threshold. Like
That's why you got so good.
Yeah, this is like crying. Rufus has made me cry. Stig's made me cry. Gui's made me cry. There's a whole lot of people who have made me cry because I have a low pain threshold. But
Woohoo, it's not me.
Oh, Rowlands made me cry. Rowlands given me concussions twice.
You can't remember to cry when you get a concussion.
And I just wanted to say to people, this conversation about armor is actually about what you feel comfortable in. After 26 years, I still wear more armor than a lot of people do because I need to feel comfortable in the armor. I love fighting. I really do. I really enjoy it immensely. It's a lot of satisfaction to me. But in your armor, you've got to feel safe and comfortable. So if those things aren't happening for you, like everyone goes through a period of altering their armor as they're trying to get it working and feeling comfortable. But it is really important for me, and when I'm equipping people, that they feel that they feel comfortable in it and they feel safe. Now, I can't promise your safety because some person's wielding a big stick at you that's, and stuff happens. But part of the enjoyment of that one is Rufus wears bugger all armor compared to me. He wears the body armor around, he wears other bits and pieces. He wears bits and pieces because he feels comfortable in that. Stig wears, I think, actually more armor than me technically, because he feels comfortable in that. So what I wanted to say is one of the things about the armor is make sure you feel comfortable in it. If I'd been wearing my Lamellar, Gui's blows would have just been good. But I was wearing a kidney belt because I was trying something else. I've gone back to try and figure out body armor after that because I realized I love my body armor. It makes me feel safe.
Kurgan, I remember early on, Kurgan giving me so much shit for having not enough spine armor.
Yep. And
breaking news: Gabs is not a pad boy.
But make sure you feel comfortable. And if you're not feeling comfortable, tell someone about it. We can always modify bits and pieces. We can always add bits and pieces. Like, I'm going to give it a weird example. Shoulder armor. I hate being hit on that point. There's a little point just here that if it hits it, your arm goes numb. And it hurts. It's the bony spot. I know there's probably some physiological term for it. There's a whole lot of different shoulder armor that you can wear to cover that one in regards to it. I put all my newbies in shoulder armor, even if I've made sets of shoulder armor just to give them, just alone. Armor to you make your own options in regards to it. So if there's something you need, talk to the people options about what to do to armor things, because it really will make the process much more pleasant for you. And it's important to us that you enjoy the process of becoming a fighter and then enjoy the fighting process. It's quite long-winded, but it is related to armor as part of that process. That's me.
Yep, and I think yes, you should wear what apart from minimums, which everyone should be wearing. Anything more than that is purely based on your comfort level and where you are and are not comfortable getting hit. And I think that's an important takeaway for all of us. Okay. So, unless anyone has anything else there, we might call that a night. Thank you for everyone coming along. This was a really, really good turnout. I hope everybody has learnt something. The footage will be posted to YouTube first, where it will go into an unlisted video that I have, or onto an unlisted channel that I have, so that only people who have the link can access it, and then I will be posting it in Lockhart Fighters, where you can share it to your local groups for those that might want to share it around amongst the STA Facebook community.
I did want to briefly say that Stig flagged with me that some people are interested in doing leather armor specifically, or on the way. You can contact me on the Lockhart Fighters page, or I think I'm on the Rowany page as well. So it's Alex West specifically. I've done a lot of the half gauntlets. I've done leather arms, some other bits and pieces. So there are some people who are interested. If you want to reach out to me, I'm very happy to have that conversation about what I do and share patterns. I've got no issue with patterns if you want half gauntlet patterns or arm patterns, how I do bits and pieces. And I think I speak for the same for Rowland, who offered his patterns. If you chat to him, I know that Rufus is always very friendly, helping with sending any patterns he uses. So if there is anything you do need, do reach out to us. All three of us are on Facebook. So if you need any suggestions, give us a hoy.
Yeah, thanks for that, Gabs. Yeah, it's really appreciated. And for Roland and Rufus as well, with the general armouring expertise and willingness to share and help other people out. Yeah, it's fantastic, and I think as evidenced, we've got a really big turnout for this. I think there's a lot of interest around the topic. So yeah, I'll be looking forward to seeing more armour being made around here in the near future.